Recently I took a trip down to the New South Wales south coast to Berry, and I caught up with Joe Rogers from Lawn Solutions, and on that trip he was kind enough to send me home with a little piece of their new grass, the Zoysia Australis. Now, this is not how they cut turf normally. This is how they cut it 50 years ago, wasn't it?
I think so.
Now, at the time I was sort of unprepared for it and I didn't have anywhere to put it, so I put it in some tubs until I had a spot ready. Now today, and actually sort of, I guess, for want of a better word, I'm going to try and sprig it out. Now, sprigging, basically what we're going to do is just going to tear it up into little pieces, plant it in the ground, so a smaller section of solid turf will become a larger area that will grow in and become a new lawn. Now, it's probably technically the wrong time of year, or quickly becoming the wrong time of year to undertake this, but I'm not in a hurry for it to cover over, and let's just see what happens. But I can guarantee you I'm not expecting to see a lot happen with this stuff till spring. So if you haven't seen Australis before, how can I describe it to you? It's got a larger leaf on it than, say, a couch grass, but it's probably finer than kikuyu, but it's probably got the colour a little bit along the lines of the colour of Queensland blue couch. So it's said to be a fairly low maintenance kind of lawn, and about 12 millimeters is the lowest height of cut recommended for this, up to about 30 or 35. So suitable for most home lawns, I'm told. I don't have a lot of experience with Zoysia generally, apart from the Primo Zoysia trial I'm currently undertaking. But today I'm happy to expand the Zoysia trial, and yeah, let's go. Well, I should say I'll bring you guys along for the journey, and we'll either see if I successfully get this stuff to grow, or I totally do it at the wrong time of year and fall flat on my face. So the area that I've actually planned to sprig out is a little bit more, once again, of my sapphire buffalo. So you can see here, it's probably coming up on camera a little bit white in places. So the reason is here, I did actually a little bit of a height reset on this, and I might have been right at the end of the season. It should come through right at the end, but it's why it's not looking as great as it could be. This is the area here today that I've already sprayed out with Roundup. As you can see, as we head into winter now, my shade line will progress right out to about that tree. So unfortunately, this whole section here will not see any direct sunlight until springtime. So we'll plan out this back section here, we'll bring it down. I'm still going to put some in here. It's obviously going to establish much slower than what that is, on top of an already slow to establish lawn. And just quickly, while we're down here, the Durban grass, or the sweet smother grass, it's really filled in now, looking really good. Again, I gave it a height reset too, so a little bit lighter on in color at the minute, but getting up close to it, there's that amazingly unique seed head it gets to. Really unusual sort of a seed head. I wonder if I can put it there. So kind of an unusual sort of a seed head on that one. Another one sort of there. It's looking really good. It's really thick and really lush. And what I find with Durban grass, it actually likes to be a little bit crowded. So it seems to do some of its best work when it's filled right in and has a little bit of competition with itself. As it spreads into a new area, it doesn't really get thick and happy until it gets a bit crowded. So just an observation I've found along the way. Sprayed this out twice now. I've gave this a good hit with glyphosate. It's good to go. So what we need to do now is we need to hit this, we need to get rid of all this material here. So the best way I think we're going to tackle that is going to bring the rotary mower in. I'll mow up all this stuff here. As you can see, it should come out pretty easy. And then what I'll also do is going to run the scarifier across this, and that way we're going to pull out any of these sort of more loose bits and pieces, giving us some nice exposed ground to start planting our new variety of Zoysia. soil moisture here is nice and high at the moment, which will be nice and important for establishing a new grass and keeping it nice and moist, etc. So as I mentioned before, I might just run the scarifier through this probably just maybe once, just to rake out a few more of these bits and pieces, or I probably could even drop that mower down lower. That was the third lowest setting, so it wasn't the lowest of low settings. You can see a little bit undulating here, but really it's not going to matter a great deal because we're about to sort of half turn it up anyway to plant our sprigs. When we plant the sprigs, I might actually just leave maybe a mower width or a little bit better than a mower width along here, just to allow the Durban grass to keep coming across. As I said, this one here is merely a trial and just to see what I think of the Australis. So I'll leave a buffer zone because this will spread quite rapidly. We'll leave half a metre maybe, and we'll focus on this strip here for our planting. Tell you what, those scarifiers do an amazing job. And look, for a lot of home use, you probably don't necessarily need a commercial machine like that one. I mean, in this case here, it's really lifted up that material really, really nicely. I will rake it through in a moment. I'll just try and rake out enough of this, or as much of that sort of old stalky buffalo material as I possibly can. But yeah, that's looking really, really, really nice. So we're setting this up as best we can, even though the season is all but done and dusted. So before I go any further with planting out my new Australis, I just want to prepare a little soaking bath for it, if you will. So we're going to pull that turf out of those trays, going to hose off the excess sand or growing medium that was on it. Then we're going to pop it in a bath of Seaweed Secrets and a little bit of Stimulizer. So a couple of things. Seaweed Secrets, or the seaweed, will actually help to minimize the stress of what we're about to do. And the Stimulizer is actually really, really good to create or stimulate root growth in the plant, and that's what we're chasing. We want all those things to happen. So we'll make up a tiny little bath. It doesn't have to be a really strong solution. It's just going to be swimming in there while we prepare the ground and while we plant out. So it doesn't give it a chance to dry out, and it can absorb a little bit of the goodies along the way. Now, again, I'll put a link below if you're after any of the Plant Doctor products. That's rooted down much more than I thought. So those roots have actually already penetrated right the way to the bottom there. Wow, that's actually done really, really well. As you can see, I used a very sandy mix to get this going, but yeah, mate, these roots are really gone down deep already. So yeah, really, really impressed with that, because it hasn't been in this all that long. So yeah, no, good to see, good to see. We'll hose this off now because we'll need to get rid of all that sand when we break this up into little pieces. Okay, you can probably see clearer here now just how well this thing has established roots in that tray in such a short time. Now granted, that was you know, obviously getting an extra more temperature from the sun and being in a pot, the artificial temperature from that, but not a bad result, not a bad result at all. I've already put one in there. We'll pop this next one in here for the moment, and that can just sit in there and absorb some of the nutrients. I just put that lid on because Buggerlugs here wants to drink it. Just going to mark out our little standoff zone, which is going to give the Durban grass a chance to grow to. So it's going to draw or paint a mark line across here, which will be our exclusion zone. That'll give this grass variety a chance to come across, and we'll start our new variety here, and then we can travel it this way and just see how the trial goes. There's a couple of different ways that we can actually plant this, and I'm going to actually use this old buffalo as an example. Now, one of the ways you could do it, if you, for example, bought one roll of turf, you could break it all up, wash all the dirt off at first, you could break it all up, and you'd end up with pieces like this. Now, each little node will shoot some roots. So basically what you could do is you could have your prepared ground, and you could basically spread this out, cover this over with some soil. Now with buffalo, you need to have a little bit of this exposed, but a little bit covered as well. So it's a little bit more tricky, but stick with me for a minute. So we could sprinkle it all around, cover it with sand or cover it with a top dress, and keep it really, really wet. And eventually this would come through and you would get in time a new lawn. Now, because I'm sort of planting a zoysia grass, which is incredibly slow compared to your couch grasses, and you've got QUs and all that sort of thing, I'm going to use the Pro Plugger, not because I want to create perfect little plugs, but I want to use that to get my depth, to get a nice little cup, if you will, in the ground. I can drop a piece of the zoysia in the ground and cover it on top and keep it wet that way. I just feel I'm getting a little bit more depth, a little bit more protection, because I'm in a bit of a situation where I don't want to overwater, and I can't let it dry out, and I'm not going to see much activity until spring. So I'm going to go that way for a probably more reliable method. But if it was the middle of summer, you could certainly go along the lines of simply spreading out, covering with sand or covering with a soil, keeping it wet, and eventually it would sprout. Now that would work for couch grasses, kikuyu grasses, buffalo, and obviously zoysia. Not really something you do with cool season grasses a great deal. It's more of a warm season grass thing. So from here on in, it's pretty straightforward. Just making our hole somewhere around about where I put the pink paint. And as I said, once we cut up the zoysia into little tiny pieces, we'll drop tiny bits in there and cover them with some dirt. Little holes in the ground here now, and I've just gone the absolute most shallow setting on the Pro Plugger. As I said, all I wanted to do out of this was to make a consistent uniform hole that I can drop a little piece of the zoysia in here, cover it over, and that'll be what I'm doing. Okay, so I've got my sand now, and all we're going to do is, once we put a piece of zoysia in there, is fill the hole up with sand, and at the end we'll give the whole surface a light top dressing, and keep it watered, and then we wait. When we're planting this, even a tiny little piece like this would be totally fine for a hole. So you don't need much. It's just a matter of popping it in the ground, and then we'll cover it with some sand. Okay, so that didn't take all that long at all. If you break it up into little sections, get your holes done first, and do all that sort of thing, it moves along quite swiftly. All I've got to do now is throw a little bit of sand over the top of this just to fill into some of the holes, fill in around the new sprigs, the new Zoysia. Now, I had 2 tubs of it. I've only used 1, so if something happens and it doesn't grow, etc., I've got another tub there. Come springtime, we might just have to do it again. But I am cautiously optimistic that it should be slow, but I'm confident it'll live. Particularly curious to see how we go in the shade. As I said, constant shade in that section there. Back to normal sort of sunny conditions through here, bit dry through here, bit more moisture as we get closer to the house. So keep this not soaking wet and not allowed to dry out. We'll keep it at the happy medium as best as we can. But first of all, we'll chuck our sand out. I'm going to give it a water in with a very gentle shower-like nozzle. It's going to help the sand work its way into the plugs. So I'm just using one of these shower rose type nozzles, and this one here is made by Gardena, and you can get these at Bunnings. And as you can see, they move the sand around, but it doesn't disturb or blast it out of the way. It just gently helps it settle in, and that's what I'm trying to do. You can see it going in there. Max, go away. And it just helps to settle it out, move it around without blasting the sand all over the place. Again, it just starts to sink into those holes really, really nicely. And that's what we want. We can start to see now we've got some of the sprigs starting to push back through, so we've got a little bit of green material above the surface, and that's what we're aiming for. We'll leave a little, we want some light there. We need it to photosynthesize. Now, I'm not planning on putting any granular fertilizers on this at all, and that's more because we're coming into winter dormancy for this grass, and I don't want to sort of stress it out. We will use some Plant Doctor liquids, like we'll use our seaweeds, and we'll use all those sort of stress busting products, so the Stimulizer, and we'll use Seaweed Secrets and Quantum H to help the soil, but we're going to avoid any sort of fertilizer as such, anything granular particular. Maybe if we start to see a bit of a response, a liquid fertilizer going forward, but no granules now, no granules at this time of year. So you can see here now that I've washed that in. It's left us with a nice smooth level surface. Again, as mentioned, we've got some of the material poking through along here. There will be a little bit that should pop its nose up through there, hopefully in the very near future. So we'll crack on with this bit up the back here. Here on in, it's just a matter of keeping this thing here damp, not dry, and not too wet. So let's just see what happens, see how we go. It's going to be incredibly slow. I'm not expecting big things. I just wanted to get it in the ground and just sort of have a little play around with it and see what it's all about and all this sort of thing. Anyway, if you've enjoyed today's episode, feel free to give it a thumbs up, like the channel, subscribe if you haven't already. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll catch you next time on the Aussie Lawn.